Yeah, that's great. That's terrific. I want to continue on with a couple of more questions, especially about binocularity. So what I have found, and I don't know if you've seen it, Cathy, I don't know, Cheryl, if you see it, but I seem to see a lot of the rapid progressors tend to be exo. Like I'm seeing big, intermittent, large angle exotropias. I mean, intermittent, but not constant exos, but these divergence excesses, especially where, you do a distance cover test and that covered eye just goes way out. And I'm just curious if where you see how that might drive myopia. I mean, my own opinion and my own theory is that they're using their fusional divergences to basically essentially keep their eyes straight. And I think that that's also taxing the accommodative system and perhaps creating an excessive accommodation, almost a muscle spasm that could be sort of either pretending to be myopia or truly generating myopia.
So that's sort of an interesting point, especially when you're talking about divergence excess. Because if you do, for example, stereopsis, those patients do better with third-degree stereopsis than they do with first-degree stereopsis. So if they're doing, for example, going through like a school screening and stereopsis is now part of that screening, they're going to pass. Where the average person who is having more difficulty, for example, at near, may not. And the other is when you look at how we want to treat something like divergence excess, there are sort of two schools of thought. One is, without really saying what's driving the condition, is just to teach people diplopia awareness, teach them to see double when their eyes are not working together at distance, so they can then, on a motor basis, bring their eyes more together. The other opinion is that when you see divergence excess, the problem started at near. And what they really need is low plus for near. And if that's true, I agree with you that any kind of convergence issue, even near point of convergence being receded, most of those patients have more of an accommodative issue than they do a convergence issue. And I don't know if that's always looked at. I mean, I understand that they both work together, and I understand that, in my view, you need to localize before you can accommodate, because you've got to know where you're looking and where you want to make something clear. But what I do find is that if you just look at that as an issue of the motor system and converging the eyes, you could be working on activities for someone to learn to converge better. And one is, you better ask them while you're asking them to converge if the target is still clear, because some of them will over accommodate to pull the eyes in more. And the other is that sometimes they don't seem to get better from some of the basic activities you think would be helpful, because they have more of an accommodative issue than they do a convergence issue. And many of those patients, if you put them in low plus or low plus with a very small amount of maybe one prism diopter base in each eye, you will see them come into a more normal function. And so it does relieve some of that, accommodative stress, and you still may need to work on that, but you will see a change, and you will see the convergence improve. And you would think if you put plus on, if you really think of the optics, you would think the convergence would become harder for them, and it actually becomes easier. And I know that they used to say that if you did put plus on and, for example, the near point of convergence reduced, they would call that sometimes a pseudo convergence insufficiency, that it really wasn't convergence insufficiency. But I don't think we have a good enough definition of convergence insufficiency. I think it's an observation that we make, and I'm not sure that there isn't more than one driver for the observation that someone's near point of convergence is receded. So I think over time, we're going to find that maybe it's a few different things going on, partly on the accommodative side and partly in terms of convergence, because when I work with adults, for example, who have had accident or injury, brain injury, and they demonstrate convergence insufficiency, they do not come around and they do not recover as quickly or as easily or even with some of the same activities than an 8-year-old with a slightly receded near point of convergence. So I think there's something different going on, and I'm hoping over time we'll be able to figure that out a little more.